The modern day man has failed. He stands for nothing. He celebrates self-abuse. He says nothing as the entertainment industry markets a pornographic agenda to his daughters. His children have embraced a culture of strip clubs and domestic violence. When the modern day man finds that life isn't going the way he wants it to, he resorts to shooting sprees and terrorism. The modern day man is treated like cattle. Every time he steps outside, his image is captured on a security camera. Metal detectors are a way of life. Cones and barriers make festive gatherings look like a murder scene. The modern day man blames his government.
For those of you who live on the northern upper leg, I will call it, upper stretch of Route 58, those of you in Weymouth, Abington, that area, if you head south and go way, way down, almost, down towards Wareham, let's say, as you approach that end of the road, on your way, some of the last few towns you're going to encounter is the area where I grew up. Now, you're always going to have this debate. I've heard it many times. What's the cow town? What's the farm town? What's the most rural, kind of quiet, hideout type town? And you're going to hear people say, you're always going to hear like Carver, Middleborough. You might hear some people say Lakeville. I always, my personal opinion, I've always said, you want to hide out, you want to go unnoticed, you move to Plimpton. That's my opinion. That's the number one town. I would say number two is the town that I grew up in, right next to Plimpton, where 58 and 106 intersect. The town of Silver Lake, Twin Lakes, Lady of the Lake. You know what town I'm talking about. That's where I grew up. I've lived there since, I might have told the story on this show. I can't remember. We're now up to, I think, 12 episodes today. I was 2 years old when I moved there. I've been there ever since. I chose to stay there over the years because it's a type of place where, I think, I got my little audience here. I'm not Rachel Maddow or Mike Savage or Michael Moore or anything like that, but I do my thing. People listen to it. People are into it. And I think that, there's kind of like three types of encounters that I have there. You might have people that I'm close to who are just used to the things I say, don't really think much of it. Then you got other people who maybe I'm not that close to, but, they know me from way back. They know I'm not any type of a problem. And then you got new people to the town that are starting a family. Maybe they might catch on to some of my antics, and they just kind of look at it like, well, this guy's been here a long time, and, I'm kind of new, so maybe I should probably leave him alone. And that's just kind of that. It's like I said, I chose to stay there as I got older because I have all these opinions, and I talk about politics all over the state and in other towns, and I always figured I can just do my thing, do whatever, roam about. And the ultimate goal is that I don't want to come here when I do this show and tell Halifax stories. It's not what I want to do. And again, this show is the latest version of something I've always been doing. I've always been involved in something as far as, addressing issues and talking about what's going on in the world. And I just, I've never really felt until this week, that I was backed into a corner to the point where I kind of had to say something or do something. And that happened this past week. And some of you in the audience know what I'm talking about. You know what this is going to be about. And I'm going to pull apart this entire situation, probably come at you with some angles that you possibly never thought of before. And hopefully I can make people think and just kind of let people know where I'm at. Because I'm not the enemy. I'm not trying to censor or oppress anybody. I have a few of my friends knew that I was going to do this tonight. I told a couple of them. My buddy Eric, he's from Halifax. I told him tonight I'm going to address this. My buddy Jim, he's actually involved in the story. So How you doing, Jim, out there? If you're listening to this. And Alexandria, she's part of the story too. I mentioned her on a previous episode. She's the one who put this black line, this VOLTRON black line on my cranium right here. She's part of the story too. So I'll just get into it. Last week, towards the end of the week, Jim, who I just mentioned, he grew up in my town, my neighborhood, and he no longer lives in the town, but he sent me a picture. He texted it to me, and he's kind of like, "Hey, what's this all about?" I don't know what his exact words were. What he said in the text was kind of like, "Hey, what's going on here? What's this about?" And I looked at the picture, and I'm telling you guys, I'm being as truthful as I possibly can. I thought it was a joke. When I saw it, I said, "There's no way this is real. People are messing with me right now." I thought it was fake, and then, a couple minutes went by, and I was like, "Well, it is 2024, so and mind you too, growing up there, it was the kids you went to school with were the same kids that you saw out of the soccer field. It was the same kids that you saw in church. I mean, you just moved from one spot to the other, to the other, to the other. That just old school, one traffic light in the whole town, that type of vibe at that time. And again, I have a good memory. I do remember I was 2.5 on the month when I moved there. That's how long, when my family moved there. That's how long I've been in this, how far back I go with the memories and my knowledge of the town and seeing it change over the years. So, I saw that, and I'm going to get in a second to what it said. And I later found out, probably the next day, Alexandria, who I already just mentioned, she actually she saw it first before Jim saw it. And she purposely did not tell me about it because she knew it would upset me. And she made the right decision. She's right. It did hurt. It ripped my soul apart. And I know a lot of people watching this are probably like, "How can this guy get this worked up over this?" And again, I want to explain why people are kind of like this or why they're like me. That's why I want to pull this all apart. So let me explain what the sign was. If you go to that intersection that I mentioned earlier, where 106 and 58 meet, there's a Cumberland Farms there. So if you're heading south, coming from the north, it's on the left. And actually, if I remember correctly, if you look where you get gas and there's where you park your car and it's that little roof, the Cumberland Farms, from the best of my memory, it actually used to be its own building, and it was where that cutout is. And then they tore that down, put up the gas facility, and then the Cumberland Farms got pushed back into the plaza that at one time was behind it. And so it's this big property, but the Cumberland Farms definitely dominates that area. And so there's all these businesses kind of on the side and around the back. And from what I see, and again, I've never really paid attention to this until now because I never really had to, but it appears as some type of a hairdresser, I guess you would call it, type business around the back, around the corner. And they have this sign with advertisements for hairdressing, anything to do with hairdressing. And what they did was they put this current advertisement. It's the thing where you can switch the letters. They kind of did a play on words. It was like a joke. And they, instead of getting your hair blow dried, they kind of, spun the words around a little and made it into, I'll just, a vulgar kind of pornographic reference. And that was what was on the sign. And, it was pretty blatant, play on words, but also blatant at the same time. Those of you who saw the sign know what it said. And I'm watching what I try to, I try to make this show. I know that the topics are really heavy on this show, but I also kind of try to make it kid friendly because I think there are topics that maybe parents might want their kids to hear some of these episodes. So I try not to swear or use the actual language. But those of you who saw the sign know what it said, and those of you who didn't, just trust me. It was pretty it was pretty abrasive. I couldn't believe that this was on there and that it was right there out in the, sight of everybody. So, again, sexual reference, pretty vulgar as you can get. And it was right there on the sign, out in front of the Cumberland Farms, even though it belonged to the hairdresser place. Now, I saw this, and I thought a bunch of things. First of all, I've advocated it on this show. I am all about private property and being able to do what you want on that private property. I don't think a town, state, or federal government needs to step in and solve problems. I believe people, the citizens, can solve their problems. And I stand by that, and I live my life that way. And I'm not the type to say, complain, take their sign down, tell them they can't do it. I'm not that type of person. The reason I get upset is this. It's the whole picture. First of all, I can take a joke, okay? I'm not that uptight that I get what they were doing, and I get how some people would say, well, they didn't really say this. They were just kind of joking around, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. The problem is this. I have seen kids walking by, 10-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids who live in the area, walking down that sidewalk to that Cumberland Farms to get candy. School buses go by there, little kids. The traffic has been building up there, believe it or not, right where that sign is in recent years. And, if you've got little kids in the car that are learning how to read, it's right there in front of their face. And I just feel like when you have this level of freedom where we can say whatever we want, I do feel it's with the assumption that somebody's not gonna make reference to a sexual type of behavior, a slang word, a slang phrase that's vulgar. And especially when you get like 11, 12-year-old kids who they might kind of know what that is, or they're learning about it, and it's just more evidence to them that this type of stuff is okay, and it's just do whatever you want. That's kind of where my concern is. Now, I also want to add to this. Again, it's the big picture. Diagonal to where that sign was, and I'm saying was. I'm now going to say was, okay? Because we'll get to that part. A Mary Lou's Coffee just went up recently. My arch enemy. I've had a lot to say about Mary Lou's Coffee for years. And Mary Lou's came to my town. I sat there and watched girls who looked like they were teenagers standing out there, not looking like they're advertising a business, but looking like they're dressed for a day at the beach. And I see guys my age and older hanging out the window, honking and waving at them. This is right in that same area. There's also, as I've talked about, I think on this show, in this same town, there's a surveillance camera that is pointing up and down 106. When that first went up, and I've never researched it enough, but I was told it was to catch people pulling out of Hawaii Gardens and All Seasons. When people were getting fist fights, or there would be incidents happening, and that's how they would catch the license plate. This is what I was told. I'm not claiming even necessarily it was true, but when I kind of pried a little bit, that was kind of always the reason. That's where the problems are, and they're trying to catch people, okay? And I'm tying this into it as well, okay? Because this stuff's all connected, and I'm going to get back to all of it. Hawaii Gardens is no longer there. All Seasons is no longer there, but the camera still remains. Now, maybe that camera is not even functioning anymore. I've considered that. And people have said to me, go down and ask the police why it's there. I ain't asking the police nothing, okay? I'll do whatever prying I feel is good enough for me to make an assumption, and maybe it's partially uneducated, but the last thing I'm going to do is start, see, and this ties into the story too. I don't want to start going around talking to public officials and departments. And like I said, I'm trying to go unnoticed, so I don't want to do that. If that camera is functioning still, if it's on, if it's working, they're using our tax dollars to pay for a camera that films us and films everybody, even though we're not all criminals. So every time I pull up to that thing, or you pull up to it, your face is right on that camera. Even though you didn't do anything. We're supposed to be innocent till proven guilty, but yet you're getting filmed and stored into a database. And as I've said before, some of these police cars in various towns, I don't know what the deal in my town is, but they have cameras now that are reading license plates. If they drive by your house and it's searching for plates, and you're standing in your yard, not only have they got a picture of your property, but they've got a picture of you too. I have a huge issue with that. So my point being is, we've got girls, teenage girls, standing on the side of the road, holding up signs, selling coffee or whatever it is they do at that place, and guys my age and older who are probably old enough to be their father, or in some cases grandfather, hanging out the window with their tongue hanging out, beeping at them, and the girls waving back, which is disturbing. Then we've got the sign that's referencing sexual acts that little kids are reading. And then we, on top of that, while nobody can stop either one of those two things, I'm not saying they should be stopped. I'm not saying they should be censored. But how ironic is, on top of that, I'm being filmed every time I go up and down that road as if I'm the criminal, but yet that sign is out there. Let me add to this too. I don't care what people do. They want to drink, they want to do drugs, they want to do marijuana. I don't care. I do think it's worth noting, though, there's also a marijuana dispensary now, too, right in that little area. So now there's 4 things right in that little area. All kind of, police state, New World Order type thing, distraction, look at the billboard, don't pay attention to what we're doing type behavior. My issue with marijuana, and this is not a marijuana episode, I don't want to get into it. When I was in high school, and MTV is pouring millions of dollars, Hollywood, the government, into getting me to want to smoke weed and my friends, into getting it legalized. I got to be suspicious of that. I've got to be suspicious of that. There are distractions all over the place. I always hear, the TV is your enemy. It's distracting you. It's sucking you in. I think alcohol and drugs and all this other stuff, it's the same thing, okay? And I've got a lot of friends that smoke that in recent years have kind of come to me, and they kind of see, I don't know if it's because it's become corporate or whatever. Like they've kind of come a little over to my side on this topic, but I don't want to get into a marijuana thing. It's just worth, I think it's part of the picture. And again, I'm not knocking people. If you're coming at me like, hey man, nothing wrong with it, it's a plant, that's fine. I'm not coming down on you for that. Okay. That's not what today is about. I just think it's worth mentioning. It's part of the equation. Okay. So, and I'll also say this, if that camera is not functioning, to me, that's almost even worse. Let's say it is off. I'm just playing a guessing game here. Let's say it hasn't worked in years. Let's say they just leave it there and it's just from another era when those restaurants were causing problems. Why leave it there then? What are you doing making people think that they're being filmed? I don't know. I get an issue with the camera thing. We've talked about this many times in this show. Okay, so you've got all of that going on right there. When you put them all together, that's where it becomes problematic. The sign alone, I could maybe deal with. Now, let me also say this. They've said other things on this. This business has had this sign out there where there's been other kind of raunchy messages and kind of like, I call them like, the lower level swears that you don't think as much, that at one time were considered bad. But then you had shows like The Simpsons that were saying them all the time. And I'm a fan of that show. I'm not knocking it. Again, not knocking anybody who likes the show. I remember when the first episode came out back in, I think it was 89. I think that's when and people were horrified. Parents were horrified because of some of the words Bart Simpson said, which you look back now weren't even that bad. Well, that type of level language has been on these signs, from what I remember in the past. So this is not the first time they've done this. So I see this thing, and again, my issue just being, look, man, I've said it before. We've got this train of thought where a lot of people will kind of say, hey, man, it's not my responsibility to raise your kids. It's up to the parent, this, that, and the other thing. As I've said before, I sympathize with the parents. What is a parent to do? You raise your kid right. You monitor everything they're watching on TV, and then they go to school, and the kid can be in second grade, and he or she is already hearing things about sexually explicit activity from the other kids. What do you do? Okay, so now I'm not the parent. Don't look at me. Well, what if you're a parent at that stoplight? You got to put curtains now on your vehicle so the kids can't see the sign? Now, Brian made an incredible point, and I want to bring this up too. When I sent this to him, the first thing he said was, he's seen worse in Las Vegas in that area. And I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm sure. If you're a parent and you've got a kid in Las Vegas, I mean, they've got to be desensitized to this at this point, which brings another point up, which Alexandria brought up to me today. She mentioned the South, and I would mention definitely the Midwest the first time I'd been out there. I couldn't believe the cornfields, the churches, the big massive crosses mixed in with, there are everywhere billboards for strip clubs. They're everywhere. And, someone out there explained it to me. Listen, man, it's some of these farmers, if they want to sell, the billboards on their land and they want to do business with that strip club, that's their business. If they want to do that, I just can't believe it got to be 4 out of every 5 billboards when I was out there. Why aren't there other people with other businesses that are approaching them? Like, why is it like, can they make money off of, like, I don't know, a grocery store billboard? I don't know the ins and outs in that. Like, why is the strip club industry monopolized the billboards out in the Midwest? I don't know. Again, story for another day. But yeah, there are other examples of this. And believe it or not, as kind of loose and liberal as this area is, I would say it's actually worse in some of the more conservative areas as far as the public displays. So anyway, and then, and I've even seen, there are places in Europe where you'll go into a convenience store and they'll have the magazines, their version of like Playboy and Penthouse and all that, Hustler. They'll have it right out there where the kids can see it too. And the girls are like, they got no clothes on in the cover. So, we can go down that route too. Anyway, so what I did was I kind of said to myself, look, I don't want to be the guy that complains and takes people's freedom of speech away or anything like that. But now it got to a point, so now like 3 or 4 days had gone by up to today. Now I'm going to today. And a lot of people had kind of approached me on this. And now I'm hearing about it. It's going around the internet. And I kind of felt like, look, this town's going to do what it does. I'm vastly outnumbered, on my opinion. I know that. But I just figured something I know is going to be done about this. There's going to be some type of discussion in the town if it's not happening already. And I just, as someone, again, who has lived there my entire life, I just wanted my opinion to be part of the conversation. I just wanted my 2 cents to be in the equilibrium of what was eventually going to be done. And I'm not even necessarily saying something should have been done. I just wanted, even if the sign stayed up, all right, fine. I just wanted to be heard in this little town. I thought after living here all these years and how hurt I was by seeing this, and yes, I was hurt, and you can laugh at it, but I just wanted I wanted my say to be out there, my opinion to be in consideration. So what I did was, I right after work, I work very odd hours. I was out pretty early today. So by probably like 12 o'clock this afternoon, I think, right out after I got out, I went down there. I went to the town hall, not to where the sign was. I went to the town hall. And I just walked in. I spoke with the secretary. The selectmen have a secretary, so you can go in this office, and while the selectman might not be there, that you can, this lady is there. And I talked to her, and I'm glad I did. I had a really nice, I want to pick apart the conversation I had with her because I think it was a big help, and it helped me kind of feel better about it. So, I talked to her, and I said, first thing I said was, I had my phone, and I go, I have a picture here that someone sent me, and I assumed other people might have maybe been complaining about it. And I'm like, before I show you, because I don't want to show her this thing, what it says on there. I'm just like, and she doesn't know me. And I'm like, do you have any idea what I probably have here, what it is? She's like, no, what is it? And I told her. She's like, oh yeah, she had seen it on the internet as well, implying that people were discussing it. She knew about the sign. And we talked for a few minutes about it. And first thing I said, listen, I'm not asking anybody to go down there and rip the sign down. I have no ill will towards the people who run this place where they do haircuts. Okay? No ill will at all. I'm not even out to tell them they can't do it. I just kind of want it out there that we all got to work together and coexist together, and there's got to be some understanding that little kids are going by there. And maybe someone can relay to somebody who has more power than me, or somebody that might be in contact with these people that, look, you're allowed to have this business here. This town's been here long before this business. Maybe we can not have that type of thing out there for the kids to see. That's all I was really trying to relate. And I said, look, I don't want to set up an appointment with anybody. I don't want to call anybody. I don't want to email anybody. Can you just pass this along? Which she did. And she's like, you want to write it down? I go, no, I think you can pass it along. It's just very simple what I said. It's not a lot to remember. And she brought up some really good points. Very good points. First of all, and I already knew this, she said, look, that plaza is private. The town can't do anything about it. And she's right, and I agree with that. Now, my counter argument, and again, I'm not saying the town should do this, but there's got to be some laws somewhere in that book, even if it's from the 1930s, that say you can't have lewd, obscene type, captions on a sign or something like that. Because you know that if somebody blatantly put some type of image on there that was blatantly pornography, over the top type thing, there is a line you can cross where the town's they're gonna knock on your door and be like, you have to take that down. So to say there's nothing we can do about it, I don't think it's completely true. I think there's a line. They just haven't crossed that line yet. I think there is a line you can cross. You start showing pictures of people's private parts and stuff like that, they're going to take that thing down within minutes. So that I don't completely buy that. There is a way around it. But, and again, I'm not saying people's free speech should be addressed like that. I'm just making the argument here and kind of look at the other side of the story. So the other thing, she said, somebody should call the owner of the plaza because they might not realize this is going on. My other argument was this. A lot of the pictures that were being shown looks like the sign actually goes to Cumberland Farms, because Cumberland Farms is in the background of every photo so far that I've seen. Does Cumberland Farms know about this? Do they have an issue with it? I'll bet they would. So that, there's another part of the story. She also brought up something that I guess she heard people kind of making this argument. And this is an argument I've made for a long time, and I knew this would come back eventually to bite the conservatives in the face, and it kind of finally has. Up the road, so I mentioned Plimpton earlier in this when we started this dialogue. In Plimpton, there is, I guess it looks like a house to me. It could be a business, but I think it's a house. There's a house where out front they've got all types of Donald Trump merchandise paraphernalia, and there's a big, massive sign. You all know the sign, and it's swearing at Joe Biden, obscenities, vulgarities aimed towards him. Again, massive. And the first thing I think when I see that is little kids seeing that. Okay, I had an issue years ago when Brian's hometown in Hanson. Brian, you remember the guy that had those signs out front, and they were pro-conservative, going against Bill Clinton and all this stuff. But again, there was some kind of pornographic Monica Lewinsky, you know what I'm talking about, references. And I said back then, you're defeating your own cause. Your party, your Republican Conservative Party, is concerned about family values, the destruction of the family, the destruction of the moral fabric of the country. But then, in an attempt to combat that, you put these signs out that are making sexual references. And, again, kids asking, what does that mean? What is he talking about on those signs? Well, I would say the same thing to this guy in Plimpton is that, what are you trying to achieve? You want little kids reading obscenities? That's your way to fix the moral decline of the country? I mean, this is crazy, and it's huge. It's massive. And I guess this secretary, this woman at the town hall, who, again, I want to thank her. I'm not going to say her name, but she was very helpful to me. I enjoyed talking to her. And again, it calmed me down. She, she brought that up. I guess some people had kind of mentioned that. Well, if that guy can do that, why can't we do this? And I would say the guy with the Donald Trump merchandise, the obscenities, or the woman, I don't know if it's a woman, but the obscenities on those front, in the driveway there, 10 times worse. I wouldn't say worse, but I'll say just as bad probably. Maybe more loud, maybe more flamboyant than what was going on up the road. So, there's an argument there to all you conservatives who do that type of thing. The argument is now being made against you. Well, those conservatives, those family values, church-going conservatives, they use these vulgarities, so why can't we? And I told you a decade ago that this would eventually be used against you, and now here it is. So, me and her talked, and I said again, I go, I'm not telling you guys to do anything. I know people are talking about this, and I would just really like my opinion out there and my 2 cents, because the argument right now, from what I'm hearing, is lighten up. It's a joke. It's a play on words. What's the big deal? They didn't really say what they meant. It was just, and I wasn't hearing much, my personal argument. I was not hearing that anywhere, and I just wanted to add it. Also on the topic of private property, one other example I want to give too, while we're talking about the thing with the Donald Trump thing. Another example that Alexandria gave me earlier today was the Dighton-Berkeley Bridge. When they redid the bridge or made it, I want to get the story right, but it went from like 1 lane to 2 lanes or something. There were some property owners there that were upset about it, or the way they were building, or the movement of the bridge, something to that effect. And, I'm told she says they put a big, like 9-foot tall paper mache hand giving the middle finger. And it was upsetting people that was there. And again, I know we have freedom of speech. We have all this. But I would hope that I don't have to drive by with little kids in the car with a big middle finger, humongous like that.
Man, you would hate the stickers that people put on their trucks.
Yeah, it ain't just the middle finger, Brian. Give me it's a lot on people's trucks. Thank you. How about not the sticker? How about people just do it anyway? Every other photograph you see on the internet. Yeah, I don't give the middle finger ever. There's no photograph of me giving the middle finger. I'm not trying to be like Fred Durst and not even knowing who I'm giving the middle finger to. There's no middle fingers, and I'm very precise about who I have an issue with and who the opposition is in this world. But, so anyway, I had that talk with this woman. It was great. They passed it along. 5 hours later, on my way here, the sign is now gone. It's not there. It's not even there. It's been taken off the little grassy spot out front. I'm assuming they were told to take it down. This is causing a problem. Maybe somebody stole it. Because that's possible too. I'm going to say the more likely scenario is that they were told to take it down. Again, I mean no harm against these people. If what I said to this woman today was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and got it taken down, because this thing was up since last week. I don't know, maybe I have no idea. I'm not implying that. I'm just saying, it's been up since last week. Today I went to the town hall, and then today it got taken down. Did I have something to do with that? I don't. Who knows? I may never know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It was a group effort. Other people clearly were complaining.
Maybe they really do that in the back of the hair salon.
That could be a possibility too. I've heard worse. Maybe it was a wink, like it was code.
Not very good code.
Yeah. He should be a little more discreet. But yeah, I guess that too. Maybe they got their point across. Like, okay, everyone knows now. We can take the sign, and I don't know. But anyway, but I know. Jokes aside, I mean no harm. Again, and listen, if the people who run this business hear this episode, you can't be mad at me. I think you're beyond the point. If you're gonna draw that type of attention to yourself, and Brian over here makes a joke like that, I think on some level you're kind of asking for it. You gotta, you're telling the town to have thick skin. Well, you gotta have some thick skin too if you're gonna do something like that. You gotta be ready for those consequences. But here's the thing that like is so crazy to me. Again, I am not aware. I'm sure there were people saying, kids are reading this, et cetera, et cetera. The interactions I had, what I was being told by a lot of people who were seeing this on the internet, I didn't look myself. I was being told over and over again, the debate was whether or not you can take a joke and people need to lighten up. I didn't hear a lot about, my point of view with the kids. And I just wonder how, and it gets back to the Mary Lou's and all the other stuff I was talking about. I feel like I've been in these scenarios many, many times where I'm looking around and I'm even looking at people that were the school teachers at the elementary school when I was there. They were, the soccer coaches, the baseball coaches, the basketball coaches. They were the adults. They were the parents of my friends. And then the even older generation, our grandparents, that are now turning into great-grandparents. I feel like there's a lack, while there are people that are concerned, no doubt, and I'm not the only one that's concerned, I'm looking crazier and crazier. My behavior is starting to look odd to people. The voices that speak out against this thing are becoming smaller and smaller to the point where the people, the baby boomers who taught me this code of morality and etiquette, even they've become desensitized. They're not really bothered by it anymore. Now, I want to say something else too. I've been specifically, again, getting back to, if you want to play politics, the moral decline of the country, and conservatives tend to blame the liberals. I have long maintained, and I gave the example today of the guy with the Donald Trump merchandise in Plimpton out in his front of his property. I have long maintained that the conservatives have also done a lot to destroy the moral fabric of the Go ahead, Brian. Yeah. All right, we're back. We just actually paused for a minute. We actually do this quite regularly. Brian will find something that he wants me to see, and I'm glad he just showed it to me. So if you hear a little skip, we just pause for a second to check out a video, and I'm gonna comment on the video. I'm gonna get right back to what we were talking about. So what I was trying to say was, the conservatives have also been to blame for this. Okay, let me explain. You've got entire communities now on the internet where they make videos about how women, and they blame women are now untrustworthy, they cheat, they don't want to be married, they sleep with all these guys, and then they expect everyone to treat them like they've never had sex before. There's a whole community out there that addresses all this, okay? And I watch these videos and I say to myself, wait a minute. I remember the dawn of this problem. I remember back in the 90s, again, high school, you had shows like The Real World, the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton, when a lot of this stuff you're seeing now is kind of being pushed. Was it being pushed before? Yeah, of course. But the more overt shaping of it, I believe you were starting to really start to see it in the 90s. It was kind of, the cat was out of the bag. What I remember was all these guys, conservative men and liberal as well, friends, people around me that I grew up with. I remember a bunch of things. Me warning about this, and guys telling me to relax, telling me I'm too uptight. This is great. We're living in this like Wonderland where girls do whatever we want them to do. They were all about MTV at the beach house, Girls Gone Wild, MTV The Grind. Remember that show, The Beach House, The Grind? They were all about it. They thought it was incredible. Then, as they got older and they see the country turned upside down, now they have kids, and they're concerned with what their kids are being taught. They're concerned with how their daughters are behaving. They're concerned about maybe the fact that their wife did leave them or was cheating on them. I go, hey man, this is what you wanted. Liberal and conservative men alike were okay with all of this. There's this train of thought going around now where people say, I've seen it on the internet where, it's a picture of Kathy Ireland in her bathing suit, going, remember when this was on the Budweiser commercial, this was on Sports Illustrated. Now it's transgender. Well, dude, that didn't solve the problem either. Back then, they were still promoting loose sexual behavior. They were still pushing it on the kids with the alcohol commercials, with Kathy Ireland. They were still doing it then too, but it wasn't on your radar until your Republican overlords told you were supposed to care about it. It wasn't on your radar until it became homosexuality. Let me give an example. This video that Brian just showed me, it's talking about in Indiana where they're trying to stop children in kindergarten, first grade, even before pre-K as they call it. I call it nursery school. That's what when I was a kid we went to nursery school. But pre-K, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. They're trying to block people who want to teach kids that young about sexual situations. Citing in this video that the Democrats have been blatant about the fact that they think you should start learning about sex at 7 years old. Here's the problem. Here is the key. Listen closely, those of you on the South Shore. Listen closely to what I'm about to say. In that video, and I thank Brian for showing me it, okay? And Brian, the point you were making, you think it has not fully come to Massachusetts yet, like we're not there yet, but we're heading there. What give me your opinion real quick.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not in school.
Okay. See, I'm not either. That's part of the...
In 2008, they started kind of... That's when the shift happened.
Right,
And
okay.
now 25% of Gen Z identifies as, like, gay or something.
Right. Now, I'm going to touch upon that, too. So here's my take on this. For some, I'm not disagreeing with anything in the video. My issue is this, and this is where it's where I have an issue with the conservatives. If you notice in that video, Brian, everything he referenced as sexual education, he was talking about being transgender, gay, transitioning, all this stuff, right? My argument has always been this. When I was in the 5th grade, now think about this. This was like 1988. That's scary. This was late 80s. I've talked about this story before. We had a sexual education class. Mind you, that class was not pushing homosexuality on us, transgenderism, transitioning, none of that stuff, bisexuality, none of it. It was all sutured for straight kids. However, it looking back now, it was pornographic. The little booklet we got, I think there was a booklet. Somewhere along the line, someone gave us kids a booklet. And I remember there were like diagrams or stuff. Or maybe it was in the film they showed us. I mean, pornographic pictures. At that time, you had to have a permission slip. When that was going on, the conservative parents, who are now in an uproar, and I also said some of them are not in an uproar. There's different types of people. Some see that thing that was going on in my town. They didn't have an issue of it. So you've got a mixed bag. But I'm talking to the ones who are upset. The ones who were upset at that sign in the town center. Well, that's not really the town center. The town center is up by the elementary school. But you know what I mean, the intersection there. I'm talking to that small minority. For years, many of you had children that were taking that class, and you said nothing. Just like the conservative guys who back in the days of Girls Gone Wild and MTV at the Beach House had no issue with it. In other words, when the vulgar behavior, the loose sex, going on a sexual rampage, causing disease, causing abortions, causing mayhem, hurting people's feelings, whatever it is, when that was done under the guise of straight people behavior, you had no problem of it. No problem with it. You applauded it. You were okay with it. It was only when it turned into homosexuality and bisexuality, that's when you had the issue with it. So for years this was going on. And likewise, that sign, you take that same vulgarity and liken it to some type of rainbow flag or something, I'll bet you would have people in an uproar. But when that stuff is left out of it, when it can be presumed as straight behavior, whatever, the average citizen in my town doesn't really care. There's a lot of sexual exploitation going on. Many of you, when the Super Bowl was on, you watched your little 3-year-old daughters bumping and grinding when Rihanna came on. I'm talking about the Super Bowl, not this past one, the one before. A lot of you guys watched that, and it didn't even set an alarm. That alarm in you is gone. That's why you were hanging out the windows beeping at the Mary Lou's Coffee Girls. That I didn't ask them how old they were. They looked pretty young to me. It looked pretty inappropriate. Why is that radar only there in the case of these certain homosexuality, transgenderism, but when it comes to straight behavior, you're okay with your kids having sex? You're okay with your 11-year-old experimenting. Why are you okay with it under that context? So that's what that video dealt with. And again, I'm glad Brian showed me that. I think there was another point I was going to make there. I went over how we were being shown that class back then. And again, back in the, late 80s, I mean, that is crazy. You can see how the roots of this was going on even back then.
I had to do a permission slip and bring it home.
Did you? Okay, so Brian, did your parents sign it? Mine did.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what's crazy. Brian, in your school, do you remember? I know when I went, there was 1 or 2 tops kids in the whole grade that the parents wouldn't sign it. And they had to go sit in like a separate room. Yeah. Did you have any of that?
Were there any? I don't remember.
Okay. I specifically remember it happened all 3 times because it was 5th grade. And then I stayed back. I went through 6th grade twice, which is a whole nother story. But so I actually did it 3 times. All 3 times there were kids that couldn't watch. And the funny thing was, we all laughed at those kids. We did. I admit it. Oh, who are the squares? Their parents are, man, their parents knew something. They're probably the only smart parents in the, and again, I still say, when we had Myrna on here from Massachusetts Citizens for Life, she's the one I told the story to, actually. I said to her, Myrna, there is no way. There is no way. This goes for my parents. This goes for all. There's no way our parents knew what they were actually teaching. I think it was marketed to them as a health class and nothing more. And again, look at, like, in reference to your video, to the one you just showed me.
That thing I took home to sign, that was pretty much signing over,
Yeah, at that point.
It's signing it over to the state.
It is, yeah. Good point. And back again, Brian, to this video you showed me. Again, notice, this is clearly, I would say, a conservative guy who made that video. He keeps talking about, when he says kids shouldn't be learning about sex, then again, he references transgender and all this other stuff. I never hear these guys referencing other activities that have to do with straight kids. It's almost like, I bet if I could find the right scenario where sexuality is being pushed on a 7-year-old in a different context, maybe a television show or a song or something, a lot of times that same guy doesn't even notice. And you don't have the same outburst as you do when it has to do with homosexuality. And that's my issue with all that. So
well, that's the media's fault.
Yeah, well, I really think it's Republicans. I really do believe it's, man, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I've always said this, you're shaping your beliefs based on what that party's agenda is. So if that party is pushing over and over again, homosexuality is wrong, it's wrong, you're going to start thinking it too, but is it really that you thought it was wrong, or was because a Republican politician kept telling you that? It's the same with liberals. I've said it over and over again. When I debate, say, abortion with a liberal, they tell me the liberal agenda, what the liberal Democrat Party stance is on abortion. I know what their official stance is. I'm not asking you to recite to me their official stance. I'm asking what your opinion on abortion is. And they never have one. It's this over and over again. It is a woman's right to choose. No one should tell a woman what to do with her uterus. And I say, well, you're taking my money to pay for these abortions. If you're going to use my money, then I get an opinion. And they don't really kind of know what to say to that because they've never really had to debate that angle. They're just used to reciting their side and everyone being afraid and no one standing up and kind of giving another opinion. So that, that's my story with what happened today with the sign. There's a couple other things I want to kind of address that kind of happened locally. I really want to talk about this thing in Brockton where they wanted the National Guard. I don't know if they ever followed through with it, but they were thinking of having the National Guard go to the school because the kids are out of control again in fights. I have a couple things to say about that. Number one, again, Brockton is a Democrat Party stronghold, a Democrat utopia. Are there Republicans there? Yes. Are there Republican politicians? Yes, like anywhere else. But by and large, what the Democrat wants done is going to get done in Brockton. Nobody is blocking their policies, their way of life. If they want to do it the Democrat way, it's been run the Democrat way for the last 50 years. Nobody is stopping that. Brockton is run the way Democrats want it to run. So this is my question. When you see this type of thing going on in the schools, or any town, it doesn't even have to be Brockton. There are towns I see that are Democrat strongholds, Democrat utopias. The Republicans have no voice. They are outnumbered 20-1, and they get nothing done. It's a Democrat town. And I say, well, why is there a homeless person here panhandling? According to your stance, you blame everything on the Republicans, everything. The poverty, the problems. If the state is upside down, it's the Republicans' fault. So then how do you explain the fact that you have a town that is all Democrat? According to what you're saying, that homelessness, fights at the school, all this, you've achieved the utopia. This shouldn't be happening. Shouldn't be happening. What Republican is stopping you from maintaining peace at the school? Mayor Sullivan, I've talked about it before. Mayor Sullivan, sending the police to people's house, harassing people that had too many people in the yard during the coronavirus. This is what this guy was worried about. And now this is happening at the school. I had a friend, and I won't even say friend. It's happened. So I remember one in particular, but I've had this conversation. I worked in Brockton for years and years and years, made a lot of friends there. And I've got a lot of friends who are involved in things that, one might not be proud of. Activity, dealing drugs, crime, being affiliated with, being in a gang, or older brothers in a gang, and they're trying to get in the gang. And I've known all types, walks of life and people. And I've had this conversation with them 1,000 times. I start off with, what do you think of the establishment? What do you think of, the court system, whatever? And they've all got something to say about it. Nothing but negative. They don't like it. And I go, okay, I agree. It's an upside down system. I'm with you on that. So here's what I don't understand. Why do you participate in behavior that attracts the courts, attracts law enforcement, that gets you caught up in the gears of the system? Why do you go out of your way to get their attention? And they never have an answer for me. Or they have an answer that just kind of, it doesn't really address what, this is what I do. And, they don't even really know why they're doing it. They're just kind of born into it and never really put that much thought into it. And that's fine. So this is my message to the students of Brockton, because a lot of the kids were upset that the National Guard was going to come, and I would be upset too. I already talked about how I don't even like a surveillance camera being pointed at me. Never mind going through a metal detector to get into school. I would be furious. And now they want the National Guard there. My message to the kids of Brockton would be this. You are in control. You guys are all the same age. You go to school together. Again, just like with what happened at the town hall today in my town, I was not going there. My goal was not to ask my town government or my town officials to do something about it. That was not my goal. I was just going there so my voice was heard. Let me make that clear. And I knew that was the place to do it because I knew it was a beacon or a meeting place where people would be discussing it. So don't confuse the two. My job was in no way, I believe that it is up to the citizens to deal with that sign. And like the woman said to me today, maybe someone could go to the hairdresser place and explain to them, hey, there's little kids here. You might want to take it down. That was one of her suggestions. Maybe the people can kind of work it out. And I like it that way. So I would say that to the kids. You guys have social media. If you don't want the National Guard in your school, if you don't want the police in your school, if you don't want metal detectors, if you don't want 100 cameras pointed at you and permission just to go to the bathroom where you have to have 5 different points of identification on you to prove you're a student there, I would get amongst yourselves and fix that problem. They want these people there guiding you because they don't trust you. Create an environment where you are trusted. If you don't want that there, and I'm with you 100%, I wouldn't want it there either. You guys have to take control of this situation. Don't wait for the school board. Don't wait for your local politicians. Don't wait for the mayor. Don't wait for the police to figure it out. Do it on your own. That would be my advice. So I want to wrap up with I was reflecting on, again, this is kind of going back to the first topic. Maybe I should have said this first, but I'm going to end bouncing back. I was thinking about this today, and just, like the thing that happened today, and the main topic was here too. And I want to end with this. This problem that I talked about locally today, it's national, international. It's going on all over the place. This kind of thing where people are concerned. They're concerned about, the treatment of women. They're concerned about the destruction of the family. But then they kind of go in and they add to the mayhem. I've told this story many times, and I want to point it out again. I've watched a lot of the daytime television shows where, they go on and on about these topics, how disgusting these politicians are, and Donald Trump, and which is fine. That's I have no issue with them thinking that. But then they say, there's a war on women. Women are being treated unfairly. They're sexual objects. Oh, next our next guest was on the Jersey Shore. A show that did nothing but promoted disrespecting women, treating them like meat. And then Hollywood that complains about Donald Trump and things that he has said, which rightfully so, then embrace it. It's almost like, as long as you're not a Republican, you can say these things and you can be vulgar towards women, and it's okay. Now, I love this story. It was, Kelly Ripa. I don't know what version of the show. I don't know if it was during Michael Strahan or Ryan Seacrest. Was Regis Philbin still on the show? I'm not sure. But they had a year where they had both Barack Obama and Mitt Romney come on when they were running against each other. They had them both on. They asked both of them. Now, mind you, first of all, let's go through all the pieces here. They asked both of them who their favorite Jersey Shore character was. Both of these guys, now you have the Democrat who says there's a war on women, and you have the Republican saying the family is being destroyed. Jersey Shore is helping do both those things. And yet, again, how do you get both these politicians on and nothing clicks in their head to use that as a moment to speak out against that? Mitt Romney, the Mormon, couldn't figure it out. Barack Obama, who he's here to defend women. He's for women. He didn't say nothing either. He's okay with the slogans and the way they talk about women on there. He's okay with it. Both these circus freaks had no problem answering. They actually answered it. They said who their favorite Jersey Shore person was. Then a week later, they have Snooki come on. And she's the smartest one of the three. They told her what happened. Hey, we had these two. And she goes, well, why are they worried about me and not worried about the country? Why are they paying attention to me? I think she's half right. They should be paying attention to her because her industry is what's doing this to these kids. So they should be paying attention. But the fact where I agree with her with, I guess I'm meeting her halfway. Why do they have an answer? Why do they care? Why do they even know who they are? In the sense that they think it's funny. Know who they are so you know who's doing this to your kids. But when you giggle about it and you don't really see a problem with it, that's where my issue is. Two phonies, Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, who destroyed Massachusetts, came here and used you as an opportunity, and he left. Just like Deval Patrick did, just like Elizabeth Warren is doing to you right now. Where's she from? Oklahoma? She's not even from here. She's using you. Now, cut to a few years later. After one of the debates, which Donald Trump was I don't know if it was a Republican debate or what it was, but Kelly Ripa comes on one day after the debate, and she was so hurt. She's wounded. The look on her face. She just said, something like, we don't talk a lot of politics here, but I have to say, what I'm paraphrasing. This isn't exactly what she said. It's kind of how she said it. I'm trying to create the vibe here. She was sad, disgusted. Her soul was ripped apart over what she witnessed in that debate the night before. The vulgar finger pointing, the vulgarities, couldn't believe it. What has happened to our politics that this is how they speak in a debate? And my question to her is, Kelly Ripa, you had the Jersey Shore people on. You're doing it too. You're every bit a part of this mess, Kelly. And I have nothing personal against her. I actually know a dude who knew her. He worked at a restaurant years ago, and I guess she passed through, and he had nothing bad to say about her. I'm not. Her and her husband host the show now. They seem like lovely people. I have nothing against them. What I'm saying about her, I could say about all the girls on The View. They do the same thing. It's disgusting what's happening. It's the war on women, but let's have the Jersey Shore people on. Let's have all these people, the people from Sex and the City. Let's have the people who created The 40-Year-Old Virgin. All these movies and television shows who are helping create that perception of women and how they should be treated. So that's, I think some of these people have to look in the mirror, and the answer is there. So that's all I have for today. Again, thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody who's listening. If you sent me a photo of what happened, yeah, the sign's down. We got it taken care of. And hey, if you're from my hometown, if you know me, spread this around. The show gets out there from you. Pass it around. We're on Rumble, Spotify, YouTube. Play the video for people. That's how the audience is being built. Form Voltron. Get the word out. Thank you, everybody.